Dili Hussein.
Musa Adnan.
I think that's one of the first times I've said someone's full name when introducing them. How's things, bro?
I'm well, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. So for all of the audience that don't actually know, I'm sure there's many people that have seen you before. Sky News, Russia Today, CNN, you know, rinsing some people out there, getting into some intellectual battles.
Has to be done, bruv.
MashaAllah. People, I'm sure you've seen Dili Hussein before on your TV screens or even online. He's a journalist. He is someone that's been in the Muslim industry, in the Muslim scene for a very long time, MashaAllah now. And he has also been on the mainstream scene, which is not common amongst Muslim individuals who are involved in media, that they actually get chances to go on mainstream media and, you know, involved with others, you know, mainstream media, Sky News, all of those sort of channels. We're going to be talking about all of that, how it is to get involved, some of the questions, like how much you get paid, stuff like that. I think some people would be very curious to find out. And yeah, your background. So I want to start off, if someone was to look at you now and they see you fraternizing with such, you know, channels and stuff like that, to use a better word, they would think, okay, this guy seems, mashallah, very well spoken. Mashallah, you know, I'm not saying that just to, you know, toot your horn, but very well spoken, eloquent, putting Muslims across in a good light. That's something I can say about you from doing some research on yourself. Your background though, so what were you doing 10 years ago? Were you doing this 10 years ago or 15 years ago? How did you transition into this? Forget that question actually. What were you doing 15 years ago?
First and foremost, let me say how impressed I am with the way your vocabulary has diversified.
Really?
Yeah. I like it. It has a tint of intelligence. Not that you weren't intelligent before.
Okay.
But I'm just saying it suits you.
You know, one thing that I try and do is
the turtleneck and all that. It's a sophistication.
I'm being a little bit honest with you. Yeah. You know, when I get a guest, I try and, you know, mold to them.
Really?
Yeah. So Ali's really raggo, speaks to the young people. So I was like, you know what? Let's go with Ali. When I got Muhammad Hijab, I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah,
I debated him. I challenged him and I actually beat him in the debate. Yeah.
Did you beat him in arm wrestle though?
I mean, that's why he didn't share it on his own platforms, because he thought, man, if I share this, it's embarrassing. So, I mean, that's my theory. That's one of my theories.
Well, I'm not that much younger than you guys. Well, maybe you, but I'm the same age as Ali and Hijab, yeah?
Okay, yeah, that's good. MashaAllah.
But what was I doing 15 years ago?
15 years ago.
15 years ago, I was 16. Oh, God.
Really? MashaAllah. You, that's really good. You seem much older.
Permanently expelled from school.
Wow. Permanently
expelled, and then I went to another school. Was just messing about as a youngster, getting involved in gangs and that.
Okay.
And then fixed myself up. I always valued education. I think one thing my dad instilled within me was the value of education. Yeah. So even though I got up to no good in my formative years growing up, I always valued education. I never skived a lesson. I always handed my essays in time.
Why would someone who isn't very, you know, motivated for that sort of lifestyle at that time value education? So
the difference and the distinction I noticed between me and my peers at that time, who were also involved with you know, some uncanny and unsavory activities, right? May Allah forgive us all. I mean, is that, I don't know, they just didn't value education in the sense that they would skive lessons, they wouldn't give a damn about homework and stuff like this, whereas I never skived a lesson, I did my work, and it was kind of a double life, Musa. And that's the truth. In fact, I posted about this in 5 Pillars back in February, about a double life that I once lived. The life of someone who wanted to do well academically and please my father and my family, but also a double life where I wanted a fast track to success. Yeah. Where I had the wrong role models. Yani, when you watch Scarface at the age of 11, bruv. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's mad. It does motivate you. Yeah, it motivates me for the wrong reasons. First you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the, you know what I mean? So that's essentially what it was.
What do you get next?
Yeah? I can't say it.
Okay.
But people can use their imagination, or maybe not. But the point is, at the age of 16, permanently expelled, started a new school, done my GCSEs, done my A-levels, off to uni.
Allahu Akbar. Okay, and that was literally while it. So you were actually living a double life, because we were speaking about some of the things you were involved in before. You know, before we started filming the podcast, and I frankly don't think that anyone would have that expectation of you, looking at who you are. And I'm not saying that in a condescending way or in a negative way, but I feel like if someone was to look at you. It's just the way people perceive people, honestly. Like if someone was to look at me right now, they wouldn't expect that I was doing some of the things I was doing 5 years ago, even with a father like the father that I have.
What were you doing 5 years ago?
let's not talk about it.
Okay,
you
that's
know. But you know, there's something. Everyone has a past. Everyone has
Yeah,
things
yeah.
that they were involved in, and everyone has a journey. With your journey, what I find very, very interesting is you were actually on the roads, you know, which is very, very interesting. And the kind of positions that you find yourself in now, people who are involved in the roads, street life, I think they look at the type of positions that you're in as very, very
Mainstream and in their ivory towers.
yeah, and like you're just like
Well, look,
middle class.
No,
and,
no,
you
that's,
know,
well, first and foremost, let me make it abundantly clear. I'm absolutely working class, do you understand? And the brothers from Bedford and Luton who know me, they know that this isn't about, I'm not about that life, do you understand?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, in terms of how people outside of my locality have created a perception about me, that's because once you're on the mainstream media and you're on these kind of mainstream platforms, you're representing Islam and Muslims.
Most definitely.
So I can't be going there with Stone Island and snapbacks and you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And Louboutins and smashing out interviews. It makes no sense.
I'm so happy you mentioned that because that's one of the things I want to talk about later. But
Yeah.
anyway,
So appearance is a big thing.
Yeah.
The way you talk is a big thing. But even, bro, it's happened so many times. Even when I've been on interviews, I've mispronounced words. Sometimes my road lingo has come out. But I've always tried to contain it and articulate myself in a manner which represents Islam and Muslims well. But with regards to my journey, this whole kind of double life as someone who wanted to be successful academically, but at the same time always had this pull towards a jahil lifestyle, that was pretty much present even to my formative years of journalism, right? Until, of course, I looked into the deen, I questioned myself seriously, like, brother, what are you playing at? How are you living this double life? On the one hand, you want to do very well in a career, in an industry which is very competitive and is very dog eat dog. But on the other hand, you're still with brothers who are on road. You're still with brothers who are getting up to all kinds of no good on a serious level. Yeah. Then I just thought to myself, you know what? I even had some close calls with the authorities, and I just woke up and thought, you know what? Enough's enough. If you're going to do journalism seriously, do it seriously.
yeah, I think it's also about seeing potential in yourself.
Of course.
I genuinely think that, like, with me, I made a conscious choice. My dad's always been pushing me to go to university, and not for the typical reasons. My dad would always say to me, even when I started giving dawah, he would always say to me, "Don't be superficial. Have some sort of content. Be substantial in your scene. Bring some sort of value." Right now, I don't know if you're bringing that. So go uni, go study. These things are gonna make you speak better. They're gonna make you read better. They're gonna teach you how to learn, basically. And I never really listened to my dad. I'll be very, very honest with you.
Do the viewers and listeners know who your dad is?
I think so. Yeah.
Who is your dad?
I'm sure Adnan Rashid.
Hafidhullah. He's a don, bruv.
Yeah.
We grew up watching your dad debating Christians and that. You know what I mean? So I was a fanboy of your dad, not you,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
a
yeah.
fanboy of your dad. But
I don't blame you for that.
That's fine.
but it's like
you can blame yourself for that.
yeah, definitely I do. But it's like with my dad, and then one day, just like you said, I think everyone comes to a realization where they think, what am I doing? And that realization actually involved in me leaving the brothers that I was closely associated with, who I'm still very, very good friends with. People like whoever, maybe I shouldn't mention names, but I was very, very close with those brothers. But I thought, you know what, if I stick with these brothers the way I am, then I don't feel like I'm going to progress in 5 years. I feel like I'll be doing good work, but not the best work. I don't feel like I'll be the best of myself. So I need to be a bit of a maverick right now. So I left. I said, okay. I walked into uni. I had the interview, and alhamdulillah, I got in. And that was a eureka moment for me, where I felt like, okay, now I actually have this opportunity. I can't flop this. How was that going? How was it going through that for you? Was it challenging, or was it liberating? Like, what sort of experience was it for you? Like, where you had that moment where you said, enough's enough, I need to focus.
For a moment, I thought this podcast was nearly about your life.
Yeah.
You did, but it's good.
It's important to impose yourself on people.
No, it's fine. But don't impose yourself on me, literally, Yanni. But in terms for me, it was liberating. It was liberating now, but I think what happened with me was, throughout university, 18, 19, 20, 21, the war on terror happened.
Okay.
Yeah? 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
Afghanistan was invaded. Iraq was invaded.
Okay.
And these things had shaped my psyche and the psyche of many Muslims, right? In fact, my generation, and I guess broadly speaking, you will fall under that generation. We are the post-war on terror generation.
Yeah, most definitely.
A generation that grew up and lived their youth at a time when the Muslim community is widely perceived through the lenses of counterterrorism.
Most definitely.
So even whilst at uni, whilst I wasn't necessarily practicing, I was the only Muslim in my politics degree.
Wow.
One of the modules was the rise of religious fundamentalism in politics. And I remember there was one of the topics was the Iranian Revolution and the rise of Al-Qaeda. That was one of the modules, yeah? I remember there was a number of non-Muslim peers of mine who started asking about stuff like the hudud and the concept of an Islamic state, etc. And that was back in 2006-07. And I felt really, I felt ashamed because I couldn't articulate these things. I knew these things were part of my heritage and part of the deen, but they had to be articulated in a proper way, else it'd be misunderstood. So throughout university, even living a double life, I still had very strong views and I guess some kind of affinity with what was happening in the Muslim world. And I guess I root that back to my father mainly and my older brother, who played a key pioneering role in my entire family, going from a traditional cultural Bengali family to one where one became kind of practicing. But in terms of the awakening, the epiphany, that happened as a result of a very close call with the authorities, right? Which, from the blessings of Allah, I got away with it, right? And I made tawbah, and I said I'm never going to return to that life, and I'm going to now fully focus on journalism, what I should have been doing.
So I assume that was very liberating for you.
But it was very liberating. By Allah, when you're literally moments away from thinking, right, you're going to become a convict. You're going to, all this stuff that you did, your studies, your degree, your NCTJ in journalism. Think about it. I'm talking about after you've worked for a year or two in the local newspaper, right? You're someone that the community generally know, but they don't know about that life of yours.
Wow,
it's all going to come out in the public.
That's crazy.
But Allah protected me, and I woke up and I thought, nah.
Even hearing about it, Dilly, one of the thoughts that goes through my head is, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but it seems like a very, very bad decision as well to even be involved in that life when everything is going well for you. It's like that, these typical things. When you see people who are so bright, so intelligent, they've got everything going for them, and then what all of a sudden happens is they start getting muddled up in nonsense
of social circles and the wrong role models.
Nonsensical stuff, and it's like it doesn't even make sense. Even now when you're telling me that I had my NCTJ and I had my politics degree and I was doing this and I was working in the local newspaper, it doesn't make sense. Why would you be doing that?
Because when I was 12 years old, I watched a movie called Carlito's Way. In Carlito's Way, there was a guy called Kleinfeld. Kleinfeld was a solicitor for Carlito Brigante. And when I saw Kleinfeld at the age of 12, thinking, this guy's a top boy lawyer, but at the same time, he's got the kind of social circles that seems pretty cool.
So it's like some sort of glorification.
A glorification, but like I said to you, the wrong role models. Wrong role models. Perhaps questionable social circles. Most of whom, by the way, alhamdulillah, have now changed. A lot of the brothers. But at the same time, it was just a confusion of my identity, my priorities, as well as the role Islam played in my life. So fasting in Ramadan, the 27th night, praying Jum'ah, if anyone says anything about Islam, you'll somehow come out and say something in defense with very little substance. So it just made me think that this is not the well-rounded, grounded that the person that you should be. It makes no sense. And you're right. It was a life where I used to question myself, thinking, bruv, what are you playing at? Makes no sense.
I feel like that sort of stuff really holds you back. I think everyone can relate to what you're saying, because not everyone has necessarily gone through it with the field that you're in and the background that you have. But even myself, I've had things and situations in the past that have really held me back, or even people that have really held me back. And sometimes you need to throw all of that baggage off. You need to have a realization that all of this stuff that is going on around me, all of this baggage that I'm putting on myself, because essentially you're putting it on yourself.
Of course.
I need to throw this off and I need to reach my true potential. And Allahumma barik, mashallah, tabarakallah, we can see that you're doing that. And if even you say, because sometimes people say, I don't feel like I'm doing that, you're definitely on the path to doing it at least.
I hope so.
At least, inshallah. Furthermore, there's another thing I wanted to discuss. You have actually worked alongside this organization, IERA, previously known as the Islamic Education and Research Academy, an organization that's been giving da'wah worldwide. How has your work been working alongside IERA? How has your experience been, doing some projects alongside them? How have you found that experience?
I mean, I first came in contact with IERA in their very formative early years, mainly via Hamza Zortzis. And then I've been following the work of IERA, mashallah, doing fantastic stuff. Mainly it was the debates. Because the debates was what attracted me, appealed to the kind of personality that I was.
Mm.
But I think it was in 2015 to 2017 I did work alongside Ira on a project that was called Don't Hate Debate,
Yeah.
which unfortunately Ira doesn't do anymore. I don't know why. Ask Hamza in it, bruv.
What, you know what? I want to pause on that. What do you think of our CEO, Hamza? Because I know you have a very personal relationship with him.
Which part of our relationship do you know about?
I think the part that everyone would find interesting. What do you really think of him?
I think with me and Hamza,
I don't think he would mind you saying anything, you know.
well, look, first and foremost, he's like an older brother to me.
Okay.
And for those of you who are from the kind of Indian subcontinental background, you know that when there's an age gap for more than 5 years, you never get physical with an older brother. There's always that level of respect.
Okay.
With Hamza being a Greek,
Interesting.
those boundaries didn't really exist, so we used to batter each other.
Wow.
Never on the face, of course.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah. But he was like an older brother to me, as well as someone whose advice and counsel I take very seriously in the work that I do.
Most definitely.
But I'm an admirer of his work, and I'll accept it from him. I think he's one of the most articulate Muslims that we have in this world, period.
Is there anything negative you could say about him?
He just needs to keep himself in check. You know, all this love, mercy, and compassion. It's not all love, mercy, and compassion. Sometimes harshness and reality. That's also part of dawah.
We were talking about that before, isn't it? He's a very merciful person by the looks of it.
Yeah, it's not about merciful. It's also you have to understand that Anbiya alayhi salam, all of them, there was a time and place for love, mercy, and compassion, and there's a time for enjoining good, forbidding evil, and being harsh when it was needed. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was harsh and spoke harshly to the leaders of Quraysh, but then he was loving and compassionate to others.
Yeah.
So my only feedback to your CEO would be, and I'm sure he is, by the way, just balance the love, mercy, and compassion with, I don't know, some level of harshness when it's needed sometimes.
I feel like sometimes as well, you guys have some sort of friction between you.
There is friction.
You know,
friction.
there's friction a lot of the time, you know, with some of the brothers in Ira. We have this banter, we have some friction, whatnot. How have you found your events that have friction in them with him?
I think that every time me and Hamza have had heated arguments or discussions or exchanges, it's actually brought the best in both of us out. And the reason why that is, I've found that he's sometimes a balance to my judgment, and I'd like to think I'm at least a balance to his judgment. Everything all right there, lads?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think we balance.
So after that episode, let's speak about journalism.
Yeah.
Properly. I think you got a little bit warmed up for it. How is journalism as a field to be in comparison to other things, and how was your journey getting into it?
I'll be honest with you, Musa. You know, I got into journalism after graduating in politics and not knowing what to do in my life. Okay. You know, whenever someone asks me, brother, how did you get into journalism? And they kind of expect this kind of very structured journey. Yeah. It wasn't. After I graduated in 2009, I was kind of scratching my head thinking, okay, where now?
A lot of people go through this in uni.
Of course, and not many will admit it, and that's the truth. Unless you're in like pharmacy, medicine, optometry, dentistry, law, where the kind of pathway is already structured for you. Everything else within the arts and humanities, especially, you're kind of scratching your head, thinking, right, what now? At the time, I had two sisters working for the Home Office. They were civil servants. Yeah. But I didn't want to. I mean, so I grew up throughout uni thinking, okay, you know what? At some point, I want to end up working in the civil service. Yeah. But then because of counter-terrorism laws like the Prevent strategy and things which the Home Office was producing, which I felt was discriminating against Islam or Muslims, even as a non-practicing Muslim at the time, I felt that there was a conflict. It was hypocrisy for you to want to work for the government, but at the same time seeing with your own eyes the damning effects of toxic laws like Prevent. So after I graduated, a friend of mine's, he said to me, look, why don't you look into journalism, right? So then I looked into my NCTJ. So the NCTJ is known as the National Certificate for the Training of Journalists. Every print journalist in the country needs one of these to become a qualified journalist. So I did that in the London School of Journalism. Learned things like shorthand, news writing, media law, public affairs for central and local government. It's a 1-year course, got qualified, became a junior reporter, worked in my local newspaper. And it was a fantastic experience. I think I think I had a passion for writing anyway, but I had a passion to tell stories, right? One of the things my siblings said to me is that growing up, you were always a Billy BSer, right? Sometimes you liked over-exaggerating stories. The thing is, I always liked adding spice to conveying events. So journalism was kind of well-suited in that sense, that whilst it was factual, I had flexibility with regards to how I would convey a piece of information over to the masses. So in journalism school, you taught 3 things. The job of the free press is to inform and educate, to hold the powerful to account, and to remain impartial at all times. Those are the three founding principles of the free press. Now, for those of you who follow the mainstream media, know that they don't do any of those three things, right? And that was it, really, bro. Confused after uni, done my NCTJ, got qualified, worked at the local paper. And then the progression from the local paper was basically a case of 2 years of covering potholes, council tax, council meetings, local crime stories, cats stuck on trees, the elderly doing parachutes for charity, and I got bored of that and I just wanted to kind of move on.
So, do you feel like your job is important?
Yeah, man.
Why?
Why? Because at a time where Islam and Muslims are being demonized in the media as a normative editorial policy for most media outlets.
Yeah.
For example, there was a academic called Professor Paul Baker from the University of Lancaster. He carried out a piece of research where he studied more than 200,000 newspaper articles in the British mainstream paper from 1998 to 2009. He found from his research 200,000 articles, bro, which amounted to 3 million words of journalism. He studied all that and he found a number of trends. Trend number one: whenever there was a positive article about Islam and Muslims, it had 21 negative articles. Put that into perspective.
Okay.
1 positive, 21 negative. Okay. He found that words such as Islamist, extremist, radical, terrorism, misogynist, all the kind of very negative, politicized words were attributed in the negative stories. In the positive stories, there was very little mention about Islam and Muslims. It was about Amir Khan being British, or Nadia the baker, Great British Baker, was being British, or British Bangladeshi or British Pakistan. There's very little mention
about the religion.
About the religion and what role that played, if any, about the things that they had achieved.
Okay.
So we know now, and for example, even the University of Alabama carried out a recent piece of research, and they found that whenever there was a terrorist attack by Muslims, there'd be 357% more coverage of those attacks than those carried out by white non-Muslims. So we now know, aslan, standard, that there is a massive machinery against Islam and Muslims in the media. In that climate, you need the likes of myself from 5 Pillars and others who are working in other different fields in the field of journalism and media generally, because that's the only kind of counter narrative that we have at the moment. So it's important. Even the YouTube sensation, even though they're kind of mocked and belittled journalism industry.
That's crazy inspirational, bro. Honestly, I find that extremely inspirational. Even myself, I might even need to have a conversation with you afterwards. Honestly, that's very inspirational.
1 positive article to 21 negative articles.
Yeah, that's crazy, and that is purpose. I feel like that is purpose. Once I went to a university, and I spoke to all of the students, and I asked them to raise their hands about how many of you are confused about what you want to do after your degree, and a large portion of that room put their hands up, and that sort of stuff blows you away. And it's very, very simple to help people find their purpose. What you ask them is, name me some of the problems that you see in the world today. Corruption. Okay, they felt maybe that there's some problems in the media. We feel like medical care back home could be better. We feel like, and the list goes on. Many, many problems that we see in society. And my response to that was, for every single problem, there's a job that is a solution.
Absolutely.
So what you could actually do is, sister, you're studying to be a doctor. Don't be one of these people, in my opinion, who become very, very selfish with their qualification. So they say, okay, I've qualified as a doctor. I've done my whatever, MBCS, whatever they call it. And now I'm going to go
and not share that
into
knowledge.
A hospital, and I'm just going to work, and I'm going to stack up my bank account, and I'm going to go on holidays, and that's it. Yes, you're helping people, but in reality, you're only doing it for yourself. And when it comes down to it, what you could be doing is joining a charity, going every single year, going and doing some heart operations. There's some charities that we know of that do heart operations that change people's lives. Literally. Like the kid would have died at 3 years old, and now the kid may, by the will of Allah, live up until the age of 40 years old because of this life-changing operation. You could be doing stuff like that, and that's purpose. So I feel like exactly that is what you're doing with journalism. That's why I wanted to ask you that question. So clearly, I'm sure if I was to ask you this question, your answer would be yes. Do you feel like there's an agenda against Islam and Muslims?
Without a shadow of a doubt. It's been the admission of editors themselves.
Do you feel like that agenda is an intentional thing, or do you feel like that agenda is a result of stereotypes, as a result of certain things Muslims may have done, terrorist attacks, etc., etc., etc.? Do you feel like there's malicious intent with that, or it's just people that are ignorant.
No, I think there's definitely the bigger portion of the way Muslims and Islam is conveyed in the mainstream media. It's malicious and it's ideologically driven. That's not to say that stereotypes aren't as a result, but you have to understand who creates those stereotypes.
Yeah.
When the Jewish communities in Europe were demonized
In Nazi Germany.
Not just Nazi Germany, Habibi.
Okay.
Jews were persecuted in Europe
Yeah.
in terms of the way they were treated and isolated and discriminated against for many, many years before the Holocaust.
That sets up a path for people to become
Exactly.
dehumanized.
Because what did the press, even the British press, they used to report on the Jews negative because the way they dressed, the way they looked, what they spoke, how the women dressed, what they ate. Does that sound similar to? Does that sound like similar to something?
Yeah, it
sounds like us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the thing is, the stereotypes, the media doesn't cover stereotypes; they create the stereotypes, right?
Okay, so let
Understand?
me ask you a question on what you just said. Everything you've just said, to put into people's perspectives and put into their minds properly.
Mm.
If people like you are not doing your job, within the next 5 to 10 years, what are some of the things that you would see happening within the UK and Europe?
I think you will find, at least in the UK context, you'll find a number of Muslims who do seek careers in the mainstream media will compromise heavily on their Islamic values and identity when reporting on media.
Any more extreme things happening?
Yeah, you'll find that whenever grassroots stories like, let's say, the LGBT row that's happening in Birmingham schools, the murder of Abdi Shukri, may Allah have mercy on her soul, recently buried, and these kind of stories won't get reported. Do you understand? They'll get reported from a very status quo way, in whereby justice and accountability is not being carried out. Now, I know there's loads of critics of 5 Pillars, bro. I know they are. Sometimes they don't like the styles in which we do what we need to do, but sometimes it's just styles, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, we have never promised the ummah or our readership that, by the way, you're going to agree with every single thing that we do. All we're saying is that there's no one else really doing what we're doing.
Exactly.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
In a professional way. Yeah. We're regulated by Impress, an independent regulator. Myself and my business partner and co-founder, Roshan Saleh, are qualified journalists. We're independent. We have no allegiances to any state or any group. So therefore, there's nothing like us. You may not like the way we report, but the point is there's no one else really doing it. So if you have no 5 Pillars or an outlet like 5 Pillars, and I pray to Allah that in the years to come, we have many more outlets like 5 Pillars we're doing. Yeah, we don't want to be just ourselves doing it. We want more and more. But in the absence of an independent grassroots Muslim media outlet, you'll find that the Muslim community will not have its stories, its grievances told the way it should be.
And what are the results of that?
The results of that is that it's a sense of empowerment for the community.
No, I mean a result of a lack of that.
A loss of identity.
Loss of identity.
You will have a community growing up always being succumbed to and being perceived from the lenses of the mainstream media. You have no outlet. You have no platform. At the end of the day, look, if there's no outlets like 5 Pillars, right, and there's others that do similar work, but we do humbly feel that we are different. If there's no outlets like that, bro, where do the ulama and the groups and all the different groups, and where do our madrasas and go when they're attacked? Yeah. What happens when the Telegraph attacks, let's just say, for example, the Telegraph attacks Musa Adnan. Yeah. Musa Adnan, besides his YouTube channel, what other media outlet do you have to convey your thoughts?
That's credible.
Yeah, exactly. So you'd come to me, right, Didi, I've got a statement that I want out there. It's fine, you can make your video, but you need a statement that's on record, right? Yeah. So people will come to us and we will, inshallah, defend those communities and those figures and those institutions that we feel have been wronged and maligned by the mainstream press. If you don't have outlets like that, then there's no avenue, no platform for the Muslims to kind of get their point across. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So without outlets like this, there's gonna be a loss of identity and there's no protection, bro.
I would go a step further. Without outlets like yours and da'wah figures and people who are out there actually trying to clarify these misconceptions and these things that are being misconstrued, I believe that with the current climate, it's very, very possible that attacks against Muslims would happen.
100%.
I believe that it's very, very possible that Muslims would continue to get demonized to the extent that they become completely dehumanized.
Yeah.
And that's already happening to an extent.
So dehumanization has been something that's been happening for the last 19 years. And it's happened with the Irish before, it's happened with the black community before, it's happened with the Jews before, but with Muslims, it's very specific. And I'll tell you what that is. It's because it's not an isolated matter. The dehumanization of Muslims is happening here in the West and it's happening in the Muslim majority world. However,
it's like a global thing.
It's a global thing. And look, we're not throwing conspiracy theories out there. Look, when Blair and Bush said you're either with us or with them, they've made it very clear, right? You're either the kind of Muslim that we're willing to accept, or you're with Al-Qaeda. When you create that kind of binary worldview, you're basically telling Muslims you are either forced to become the kind of Muslim we want you to become, which is really a watered down progressive liberal who holds very little normative values, or you become those nutters who go out and engage in criminal acts. When that was presented to the world after the invasion of Afghanistan, it put Muslims in a very difficult position. But I want to give a prophetic example, Musa.
Please.
When you look at the lives of all the prophets,
Yes.
they all came down to their people. They faced immense difficulties and challenges, especially from the echelons of power. Nearly
Yes.
always.
Yeah.
In the case of Musa alayhi salam, when he, like as Hamza mentioned, when he came, was that Allah first told him to speak with compassion and softly. But then he was addressing the biggest tyrant in history, in mankind. And the magicians that were brought to the courts of Fir'aun were there to create false propaganda against him via magic.
Magic,
Yeah?
and illusion.
In the same way that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the poets were mobilized by Quraysh to defame him, to call him a madman, to call him a kahin, to call him a sorcerer, and so forth. So the way I see the work of journalism today is not only dealing with the misconceptions and the dehumanization, it's actually holding those who do the dehumanization
To account.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've met a lot of Muslim organizations that say, we need to humanize Islam, we need to address misconceptions. That's fine, that's your remit. But we're about asking questions about those who are doing the dehumanization. Those who from our own community are complicit in that. Do you understand? So it's not always about dealing with misconceptions. Yes, that's part of the dawah and activism in the UK and the West, but it's also asking the bigger questions. What's the money trail? What's the Islamophobia industry about? What are the laws that are coming in place that are targeting our people and trying to censor us? So I think it's multifaceted. We have groups and organizations that are doing the dawah, that are doing the kind of dealing with misconceptions and clarifying. We've got others who are holding power to account, and we all need to work together as a machine.
So if I can ask,
Bro.
how can someone, I mean, first of all, do you need more people doing what you're doing?
We need more people, but it's more to do with, can we afford to take them on?
Okay.
So what you'll find very inspiring from the Jewish community, and you'll hear all the time, the Muslim community needs to be more like the Jewish community. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
It's a common thing.
It's a common thing, yeah.
Now, I don't entirely agree with that statement. The reason why I don't entirely agree with that statement is because the socio-political and historical journey of the Jewish community post-World War II is distinctly different to that of the Muslim community.
Yeah, it's very progressive.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah.
However, there's one or two things we can take from the Jewish community, and that's how they coordinate, in a coordinated manner, they fund their media institutions. Let me give you an example. The mainstream media will never, ever cover a story about the Jewish community until the Jewish Chronicle or the Jewish News have covered it. We want to get to that stage.
Yeah.
We want to get to a stage where 5 Pillars is the bridge between the community and the mainstream press. Let me give you a micro example. The death of Abdi Shukri. Yeah. The mainstream media all covered it as an accidental death until 5 Pillars went up to Bury, and with the help of other activists in contact with the family, we found out that, you know what, it wasn't a death that happened because she was cooling off in water. There may have been a case of bullying, right?
Yeah.
We covered that story. The mainstream media had no choice
But to cover it then.
but to cover it according to our narrative. Do you understand? So that's the power that that's the kind of level of organization we need to get to.
Yeah. And what people don't understand is there's fields like history, like archaeology, like even philosophy, fields that people can study. And these fields, generally speaking, I can speak for history because I'm a student of history.
MashaAllah.
These fields make a big difference in their study and when you speak about them and when you actually make points from history. Because in my first year in uni, one of the things that I wanted to study, against the advice of my dad as well, but I convinced him basically, and it was archaeology. And he was saying like archaeology is different and stuff like that, but I went into it just to find out, and I realized that archaeology is a study of history, is finding history, but the historians actually do the commentating on that. They're the ones who make the agenda, and they're the ones who make the stories basically.
So archaeologists do the findings and the historians do the narrative.
We comment on it.
Okay.
And I realized I want to be the one commenting on it because that makes the difference. In the same way, in journalism, one of the things that I've got from speaking to you is that your commentaries on these things make a huge difference.
Yeah, punditry is important.
It makes a huge difference because the example you just gave now, That media, bro, has come as a result of study of journalism, etc. All of the things that you've done, the study of history, it put your mind in a specific place. You then wrote that article, of course, on the sister Abdi Shukri. And what ended up happening is, as a result of your article, thousands, maybe millions of people were affected because it went to mainstream
Absolutely.
media.
And
that makes a huge difference,
yeah,
bro.
and we want to get to that stage.
That makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. We want every story like that to be the case. So, for example, whenever something happens in the community, we need them to come to 5 Pillars first.
Yeah.
Whether you like us or hate us, you don't agree with it, we need you to come to us first so we can set the narrative, and the mainstream have no choice but to basically follow the narrative that we set.
Yeah.
But I think that we've still got a long way to go. You said, do we need more people? Yes, we need money for that.
Okay, so how can people get into the positions to support you and to even be like you? How can people do that? What's the process?
Look, not everyone has to be like me or follow the journey that I have followed. Everyone will have their respective journeys, and especially in the field of journalism, right? People will go into broadcast journalism, people will go into print journalism, people will try seek careers in the mainstream, others will seek careers in the alternative media. All I'm saying to aspiring journalists out there, Muslims, is that it's a greasy pole out there. And like most industries, the higher you go, the more you're expected to compromise on your Islamic identity, values and principles, right?
Yeah.
If you can remain firm and seek careers in these respective industries, right? And this transcends industries, by the way. It's not just exclusive to journalism, but with journalism, you'll find it more so because it's so politically driven.
Yeah.
If you feel that you can hold on to your values, your identity and your principles and do that, then by all means go. But I assure you, those of you who will be seeking careers in the mainstream, you will hit a glass ceiling. You will get to a point where two things will happen. There'll be either a massive expectation for you to remain quiet or to compromise on fundamental aspects of your deen, or two, you'll just be told that, and your stories and your pitches will just continue to get rejected, unless of course it fits into a predominant narrative of Muslims and Islam being crazy and radical and extreme and prone to violence.
So how do you tackle that, being someone that writes for the Huffington Post, Middle Eastern Eye, Russia Today, even you've been on big platforms?
Yeah, but you see, Musa, that's very different, and I hope that it's an example of the fruits of hard work, in the sense that all the mainstream appearances I've made, it's been as a result of the work of 5 Pillars.
Okay.
Right? So I encourage Muslims that whether it's for 5 Pillars or other respective alternative media outlets, build a name for yourself, write.
Okay, I understand.
Write more often.
Yeah.
Write analytically. Question your own positions. All these other platforms that you've seen me on, all has been as a result of 5 Pillars.
So basically what you've just said there in a nutshell is, I've been able to do the things that I've been able to do is because I've raised myself.
Yeah, because I realized
I've pushed myself.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, even on the podcast with Smarty Jannah, I mentioned a story about where one of the editors of Daily Mirror tried offering me a job. Well, I went for the job, and basically, I can't mention the editor's name for legal reasons. The editor basically wanted me to be a spy within my own community. Do you understand?
Yeah.
They said, "Did you sell yourself to me? Why are you so special? Why should we take you on?" I said, yeah, because naive, 21 years old, I thought, yeah, I'll deal with Islamophobia in the media single-handedly. They said, no, we want you to go into your community, access mosques and institutions, and tackle this issue of radicalization from within. So basically, I said to her, so you've already made a preconceived assumption that there is a problem with radicalization and terrorism and violence within my community. So you want me to become a spy. You want me to go to Adnan Rashid's lecture, a 2-hour lecture, and take a 30-second soundbite, and then get a front page splash on that. That's essentially what they wanted. At that point, I realized the mainstream media weren't for me. I'm a strong believer in building, strengthening, developing infrastructure in our own institutions.
Until they have no choice but to give you airtime.
That's it. Mm-hmm. Bro, at the end of the day, if the mainstream is stacked against you, you got two choices. You either dance with the devil and engage with that system and know very well that you're constrained and limited, or you create your own and you strengthen that and you support each other.
And you know what, Didi? What I feel like a lot of this brings us to, and the point that I'd like to end on as well, inshallah.
Are we ending?
Yeah.
That's sad.
It's been amazing. It's been really, really good.
Yes.
But to do with da'wah.
Yeah.
I believe many of the things that you've mentioned that you're doing, I believe da'wah is synonymous to those things.
100%, bro.
And I would only make a statement like that after thinking about it. I believe that it's directly synonymous. Things like clarifying these things, pushing your own agenda, pushing your own kind of narrative, making your narrative and clarifying these. At the end of the day, bro, the things that you're doing is da'wah. So how important, as someone in your position, which is a high position, mashallah, in society as well, how important...
Habibi, I'm not that high, man.
No, but I'm saying that in comparison to your average uncle walking down the street going into the masjid and stuff like that, or your average young Muslim,
they're all better Muslims than me.
Fair enough, I don't disagree with you.
Really?
I'm joking. No, but in comparison to them, you actually have a voice. Do you understand? Where you're able to put your voice across. Being in that position,
I want to be their voice.
Yeah,
it's not just my voice. I want to be their voice.
You want to be their voice. So being in that position, how important do you feel like da'wah is?
Okay.
And I feel like people don't need to necessarily become what you've become. They could do a similar job to you on a grassroots level, which is by giving da'wah.
Bro, look, you see da'wah, right? If we look at the kind of the bare fundamentals of what da'wah means, it's an invitation to Islam. Yeah. To invite people to Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Fusilat, and who is better than speech than the one who invites to Allah, does righteous acts, and says, indeed, I am of the Muslims.
Yeah.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Imran, we have raised you as the best nation from amongst mankind. Why? Because you enjoin good, forbid evil, and believe in Allah. There are so many evidences from the Quran and Sunnah which says that, which basically Allah is telling us that one of the manifestations of da'wah, or the one who invites to Allah, the one who gets involved in the work of the prophets, that it's not just inviting to Allah, that's the highest form. But as a result of that, you enjoin good, forbid evil, you account injustice, you fight oppression, you speak the truth to tyrannical rulers, etc. When the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, what's the best form of jihad? He said kalimat al-haq, the word of truth to a tyrannical ruler. So it's together, bro. Dawah, yes, it's inviting to Allah, but it's at the same time dealing with misconceptions, holding those standing for justice, and holding those who are seemingly doing bad things to account. So it doesn't always have to be journalism. It doesn't always have to be IERA. People can be doing these things in different sectors, in different fields, at different levels. We are all gatekeepers of this deen, right? And one thing I want to conclude on, Allah does not need us to preserve the deen. He will preserve the deen. We need to do what we can for our akhirah. Do you understand?
Most definitely.
So dawah is very multifaceted. The highest form is to invite those to Allah and to Islam, and a manifestation of that mindset is all the other things, enjoining good, forbidding evil, holding power to account, etc., etc.
Most definitely. Diddy, bro, it's been an amazing podcast. Jazakallahu khairan. Actually, out of all of the podcasts that we filmed, this has definitely been one of the best ones for me.
Thanks, Musa.
Because it's one that I feel like we could have continued for another hour. I genuinely believe that. I think we could have continued speaking about so many topics, and we are still yet to speak about so many topics. So I'm sure that you'll be back on the podcast, inshallah, in the future. But bro, Jazakallahu khairan for coming, man.
Barakallahu for having me, man.
No problem at all. And brothers and sisters, on that note, this has been Rerooted with Dilly Hussein. If you haven't heard of it already, we are on the major podcast platforms out there: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Make sure that you have downloaded our podcast on any of those platforms, inshallah, and listen to it as well when you're traveling or wherever you are, in the car, on the way back home from a long journey, wherever you are, inshallah. You can leave some comments down in the comment section down below of suggestions of future guests you'd like us to have on. And up until the next podcast, we'll see you very, very soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. That's a wrap.